What is going on, guys? Carter here with Edged Mindset. We're taking a look at this little guy right here. This is the brand new USA-made Pulse coming in from EMP EDC. We're also going to be comparing it to the original Pulse coming from EMP EDC, not made in the US. Full disclaimer, I paid for this with my own money. I was one of the ones to just buy this thing, so I'm not part of the pass around that you've probably seen on other channels. In fact, depending on when I get this up, this may be the first I don't want to say non-shill, that's not fair, but this is the first kind of sponsored or, whatever you want to call it, video on this knife out there, I think. Maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong, but yeah, I just bought this because I didn't necessarily want another Pulse. I really like this one. I think it's really nice and done very, very well. But I just got that little angel on my shoulder saying you need to support their effort to get stuff made in the USA. Price point's pretty good, and so I jumped on it. So before we get in, let's do some quick specs. Then I'm going to go over what are we looking at. What do you mean made in the USA? Who made this thing? Why is it cool? And I'm also going to go over some of the reasons why this isn't the best isn't the best OTF out there. I have some complaints on this knife that I think you should be aware of. We're going to cover that here in a second. You get the nice EMP EDC pouch here. Got the Atom logo on there. You get some stickers. You get an information card. Here is the EMP EDC USA Pulse OTF. Blade steel Magnacut, which is really nice. First run, 2024. You get a poker chip card here with a QRC code on the back. And you get some cool stickers, which is nice. These are fun to throw these in. I hate it when companies charge you for stickers. They should include them. Made in the USA. I think this is the only time EMP EDC has made anything in the USA. So pretty monumental, pretty cool. That's why I wanted to support them in their efforts, because I really kind of like what they're doing. Blade length is almost 3.5 inches, just under 3.5 inches. Overall length is just over 8 inches. Let's compare that to the original Pulse. You can see that it is skinnier and more narrow, but longer. So if you thought the original Pulse was a little too small, which a lot of people did, I don't agree. I think this is a really cool OTF size, and I like how wide it is, and it's very comfortable. But if you thought it was too short, well, here you go. You've got a longer version right here. Let's do some weights, and we'll do weight comparison as well. So weight, you're looking at 3.9 ounces, really cool. You're coming in under 4 ounces, which is one of the benefits of OTF knives with aluminum handles. You can really get that weight down. I'm thinking this is a little more. I bet this is like 4.0. So kind of cool. I would say same. This is wider, shorter. This one's longer, skinnier, so it makes sense that they'd be about the same. My original Pulse, I upgraded for the Mokutai clip. This wouldn't normally come on the knife. Other than that, we're looking at the same materials. Both are Magnacut, both have aluminum handles, both would normally have titanium pocket clips. Yes, this is a titanium pocket clip. One difference is the original Pulse had a titanium slider, whereas this one has an aluminum slider. So that is one difference there. Yeah, let's just jump into this knife right here. So this came in 2 configurations. You have this one with the kind of raw aluminum handle. I almost said titanium there. Raw aluminum handle that's kind of blasted, which is cool, with the white laser etched logo right there. Titanium pocket clip, blacked out hardware, blacked out button. But this also came in kind of the reverse look. You could get the black handle with titanium clip, not titanium, but aluminum colored handle, raw aluminum colored handle, and I believe it had silver hardware. So I wanted this one. So basically this, right? This color configuration. I wanted this one just because it was the opposite of the one I already had in terms of colors, and I thought it just kind of looked cooler. I really like this dark acid wash, stonewash finish on the blade here. I think that's really, really nice. I like how it's sharpened up at the front here. It's almost like, this is a Japanese tanto, I believe is what you would call this. However, it almost comes across like it's a chisel because of how it's just straight up at the top here. So it's really kind of cool, and I like how they left this front end sharpened. One of the complaints a lot of people had on this one is that they didn't sharpen this, even though it's an OTF, so they very well could have. It might not have that much functional reason to sharpen the front there, but, why not? You can. so might as well do it, but they didn't do it. So you kind of have that thing going on here. It's not quite the same, but it's cool that they sharpen this up here. I mean, I guess you'd have to. Having that be dull up at the top there would be kind of weird, but pretty cool. They also took some advice. Some people complained about this hole here. It's just there for stylization. This kind of double beveled thing going on is very typical of EMP EDC. They do it in all of their manual folders, and so they wanted to carry that design language over to this. But it doesn't really serve a function, and people thought it was weird to have like an opening hole on an OTF. They kept it on the new one, but they just shrunk it really, really down because they didn't have much real estate. But I think it's cool. It makes it look like an EMP EDC knife, and in fact, that is one thing I will give this knife. Actually, one of the many things I will give this knife is that they maintained that EMP EDC look in this knife, and they created a very unique looking OTF. I mean, that's really the best thing about this knife. They didn't innovate anything in terms of mechanics or function or anything like that, but they created an OTF that has really stellar materials for a very good price point, but it just looks like no other OTFs out there. Very stylized, especially with this scalloping across the handle here. It looks really, really cool. Let's talk action. Action's good. It's good. It's what you would expect from a typical OTF. So not breaking any ground there, but it's smooth. It fires hard. It's about medium difficulty to launch. It's not super hard to launch, but it's not super easy either, right? We're not talking, this doesn't compare to the new Microtechs coming out with their new drivetrain system. It's kind of more of an old school OTF, but it's not difficult to open. Nice and smooth. Fires really hard. There's not really any rattle in the button, maybe just a little bit. You get a little bit of rattle in the blade. This one has a slightly tighter button, really no play or movement there, and less rattle when you're moving it around, almost nothing. Occasionally you can get a little something. This one fires a little smoother. It's a little nicer. The action on this one is better. So between the two, and I wasn't really intending on this being a versus thing, but between the two, the action on the original Pulse is better. Oh, and I'm sorry guys, so let's backtrack just a second. This is made in China. This is the original Pulse. This is the Pulse USA, which is made by Axial right here in Utah, my home state. This is made in my home state. That's the other reason why I really wanted to get one of these. I haven't handled or held or used any Axial knives. I did reach out to them to see if they wanted to send me some stuff for review. They very politely declined, which is fine. Makes sense. So this is my first Axial knife, but it is made here right in Utah, where I live, where I reside. So that was kind of cool too. I wanted something for my home state, and now I have it. So this is made in the U.S. This is made in China. Now let's get to let's get back to this and just kind of talk about it. Razor sharp out of the gate. It's got a very short bevel, flat grind, so it's not a slicer supreme. It's got pretty thick stock, right? So this isn't really a slicer, and typically OTFs are just not gonna be great slicers. The original one is a little bit better at that cutting though. The bevel's a little bit longer because the blade is wider. But still, this isn't the top choice for slicing, but it will do the job, and it performs very, very well, and it cuts very, very well, and you've got a nice robust edge here that isn't going to chip or bend on you unless you really abuse it. So that's good. This new one maintained the jimping on the back here so that you can bear down on this blade. So if you're pushing through something a little bit more difficult, you can provide some extra support with your thumb, as well as allowing you to have a little bit more control over what you're doing when you're cutting. Same thing on the original Pulse. You've got this jimping on the back here. The runway is a little bit longer and the jimping is different, but they're both about equally grippy. Maybe the new one is a little bit grippier. It also has kind of that chalkier acid Stonewash finish, which gives you a little bit more grip all around. Man, that looks good. The machining on this thing is really good. Bevels are very, very even. Does look like I'm getting a little bit of rub on this blade somewhere. I've cleaned this off a few times, so this is rubbing somewhere inside this chassis as you fire it, which is a little unfortunate, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, because the main complaint I have with this knife would make you think that you wouldn't get anything like that, but you kind of do, so I don't know. What can you do? The handle is a handle, right? The handle is a handle. The handle is an OTF handle. It's a rectangle. And a rectangle is surprisingly comfortable and surprisingly simple. Well, not really surprisingly simple, but it is very simple. I mean, it's a rectangle. So there's really not any particular hot spots because it's just a rectangle. It fits right in your hand. The little square parts kind of fit in the grooves of my hand. It feels very, very good. Same with this one. It feels very, very good. The button does not get in the way of gripping the knife in any position that I put it in, so that is a plus. Pocket clip, middle titanium, really, really good. Works stupendously. No complaints there. Really awesome. There's no glass breaker on either one of these, which I know a lot of people will really like. No lanyard hole, anything like that. You can see the flag right there for Made in the USA. No lanyard hole. And I think that's it for the main thing. Let's talk about the complaint. It's blade play. Blade play on this is about as bad as I think I've ever experienced. The only OTF I think I have that has slightly worse blade play is my Benchmade Infidel. But all of my Heretics, all of my Microtechs, both the Gen 3s and the older ones, and then all the other OTFs I have don't have as much blade play as this. It's pretty pronounced. You've got side to side. I think if we can focus, you can see how that's moved around. There's also a rub mark right there. Quite a bit of blade play, side to side blade play. And what makes it even more pronounced is the fact that the original Pulse, this has the least amount of blade play of any OTF I've ever handled outside of like the deadlock, right? Outside of a knife that was designed specifically to not have blade play. For regular OTF, like it's barely, you barely have up and down. I don't know if you can even see, most of that's just my hand, kind of the meat of my hand sliding on it. It is so slight on the blade play. And so, you know, this is higher than normal blade play, but because I'm comparing it to the original Pulse, it just makes it more pronounced, which is unfortunate. And like I said, the fact that it's got these rub marks is weird because you'd think with all of this movement that it wouldn't be rubbing on anything, and yet it is. But, you know, to its defense, that is a different blade finish. This one might be rubbing, but because it's just a normal Stonewash, it might not just be showing like it would on kind of this chalkier finish right here. You can see right there, it just keeps coming back. You can clean it off and it keeps coming back. I might take this apart, see if I can figure out what's going on. Maybe I can polish something or clean something, but yeah. So that's, you know, that's a little bit of a bummer. I mean, it's an OTF. Most people that are into OTFs are okay with the blade play. It's part of the game. Doesn't affect functionality. You could argue that having those less tight tolerances could have it perform better if debris gets inside or oil or anything like that. I don't know if it's true. I mean, I'd have to really test that out, but you could make that argument. I know with firearms, that's the case. A lot of duty use pistols and things will be made specifically with looser tolerances so that they don't have to be maintained as meticulous, right? Whereas when you get into like custom pistols that are hand fit and super tight, you've really got to make sure you're not over oiling, under oiling. You got to keep them clean. So you could make an argument that it's similar with this, that you don't actually want a mechanical function like this to be this tight. Now, that doesn't apply to like the Deadlock and the new no blade play Microtech, because both those knives didn't achieve no blade play by super tight tolerances. They achieved it by having an actual locking mechanism that engages when it's fully deployed, that pins the blade in place. This achieved it by just being really, really tight. So that is a little concerning. You know, I'm not trying to be apologetic or enablist on this, but the fact that they got the low blade play on this by just making all the tolerances super tight could be problematic for a mechanical object like this, just saying. So overall, I think it's a win. I think it's cool. It's super unique looking. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out is the blade is a little skinny, disproportionately skinny for the size of the handle. I don't know if that was an explicit design choice or some sort of manufacturing issue, but you can see how much more material just looking at the opening hole than on the original one. So yes, this handle is slightly wider, but the proportion of how much wider this handle is to this compared to how much wider the blade is compared to that, you can see it is kind of skinny, but it doesn't affect functionality. It's still an excellent cutter, still a really cool, unique OTF that's made here in the United States. I think it's worth checking out. These retail for about $320, I think, for an OTF made in the USA. That's not bad, especially with Magnacut blade. And you got to remember, like, these are small batches, right? This isn't Benchmade making this. This isn't Microtech making this, where they're producing thousands and thousands of these things and they can have smaller margins. This is a very small, bespoke company, EDC EMP. It's really just one guy. I'm sure he's hired some folks to help out, but really it's just one guy who really believed in his designs, and he's getting these knives made, and he decided to go to the USA and have this one done. Oh, one last thing for anybody still hanging out. The other weird thing about these is the naming convention. I don't even know. Like, this is just like Pulse USA, and this is just the Pulse. Kind of weird. This isn't the Pulse 2. It's not some new name. So it is a little confusing. They're just kind of calling this Pulse USA, which is kind of odd in my book. It really kind of, I feel it needs its own name so that you know what you're talking about on these two. But that's neither here nor there, not a big deal. All right, guys, what do you think of the new Pulse USA? Is it something you would ever get? Do you at least applaud their efforts having this made in the USA, or do you think it was a kind of a waste of time and effort? Let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you guys later.